Hi, I'm Eva, Adam's friend, and today we are going to discuss interventions of politicians in the economic functioning of society. Less than 100 years ago, the state redistributed around 10% of GDP. Today, politicians decide on public resources that account for a third and often up to half of what a country's economy produces annually. However, advocates of state intervention argue that intervention improves imperfect markets. Politicians intervene for the benefit of the people. The problem, however, is the so-called unintended consequences. For example, if politicians provide social benefits, they have to tax other people, who then logically have less money and their social status deteriorates. And if politicians regulate entrepreneurs too much, they make them less competitive. Lower competitiveness leads to lower employment opportunities and wealth production. This, in turn, requires state intervention in the form of subsidies, which politicians have to get somewhere, for example by taxing entrepreneurs. One imprudent policy intervention thus can create a chain of new problems. The logical consequence would be a more and more centrally planned economy that has already proved to be much less efficient than the market economy. And humanity has already experienced this firsthand in the examples of the former socialist countries. The special kind of intervention is so-called protectionism. This is supposedly aimed at protecting the domestic market and production from competition from other countries. Its instruments are, for example, tariffs, which make imports of foreign products more expensive, or subsidies, which are intended to improve the chances of the domestic exporter on the foreign market, or import quotas. It is no exception that entrepreneurs themselves sometimes try to push politicians to manipulate the rules of the game in the domestic market so that regulations are tailored to their established companies. Protectionism, however, distorts the functioning of competition, constitutes a barrier to free trade and an interference with freedom of contract. Consumers are forced to buy more expensive and lower quality services than they would get in open markets. Classical liberals seek to limit political intervention. They realize that large-scale interventions lead to unintended consequences, which again provoke political efforts to correct them. But solving social problems through politics is lengthy, inflexible, subject to bureaucratic processes, and ultimately makes everything more expensive. Politics eliminates natural market solutions and forces people to be dependent on politics. Classical liberals also reject over-regulation of the business environment or regulations that serve only business interests. Over-regulation causes an unnecessary waste of economic resources that could be used more efficiently. Interest groups often remove their competition through regulation, which is beneficial to consumers. Today's enemy of the market economy is not so much former Soviet-style planned economy, but oligarchy and kleptocracy, where the government serves the specific interests of a handful of people. The opposite, however, is not the search for proper political management of society and better politicians, but an attempt to reduce political influence over the business environment or people's lives through a smaller proportion of politically determined regulations. Let us not forget this. See you again.
Bye.